We said what we believe a good course is, all right? How do we achieve that? How do we achieve it? Right, a fair start line is approximately 5 degrees port bias. That's what you should try and set to start with. As I said, that's not carved in stone. If everybody's starting one end, we juggle it around. All right, we don't go out and move at 50 boat lengths, because that'll screw everything up. But you juggle it around to encourage boats to start down that line. The start line at least 1.3 to 1.5 boat lengths for the number of starters. All right, what I've got, which has saved me on a lot of times, because the first thing people will do is come up and say, oh, the start line's too short. All right, I've got a little rangefinder, and I always measure the length of the start line. When they come up and tell you the start line's too short, you say, why? How long do you think it is? They'll always be about 10 to 15 metres short of what it is. All right. Now, obviously this will change too, because if you're in sea rig and bobbing up and down in very heavy chop, you're going to have to try and make it wider. All right. On real drifty days, you may not want to. A lot of the skippers do. They get to the start line at the minute to go, then they run the line. Because they don't want to cross the line, they run the line. You'll never get a start line, especially if you've got a 10 rater, you'll never get the start line long enough if you're going to allow boats to run the line for a minute. All right, that's their problem. They've got to sort that out. If it's 1.3 to 1.5, depending on wind conditions, that is fine. All buoys to be rounded on the same side. All right, not including the gate. All right, it's much simpler if all the buoys are to be rounded to port, all the buoys will be rounded to starboard, all right, excluding a gate. They don't have to be set to port, but it is preferable to be set to port. Why is it preferable to set to port? The the lay line to the mark, the boats are on starboard. What rule changes if it's starboard roundings? 18.3 does not apply at a starboard rounding, only applies at a port rounding. And I'll go into that when we get up to gates in a minute. Start line clearly visible from the control area. Now, as I said, these are guidelines. You can't always do it, but you can't blame skippers for being over if they can't see the start line. I know up at Sunshine Coast, in certain winds, they have a real problem, because when they can get the start line, they can't see it from the bank. What you should be aiming for is a start line simply clearly visible. Start line with sufficient water behind it. All right, how many times you've been to an event, they've got the start line right on the buddy bank, all right, no one can get in there. All marks a safe distance from an obstruction so that boats can round them 5 wide. There's no use saying, you know, there's plenty of room for a boat to go through there. The boats could go through there at 5 wide. All right, so 5 wide. The first leg of the course should be a windward leg and should be as long as possible. Why do we do that? Separate the fleet. Especially with a lot of these fleets, very competitive fleets, they'll all get to the top mark together. All right.
Start and finish lines.
Yeah.
Are they from the middle of the buoy?
No, we'll get into that. Course length, 10 to 15 minutes duration for the first boat to sail in the prevailing conditions. The DFs say not more than 10 minutes. They believe it becomes a soldier's course after 10 minutes. Why does it become a soldier's course? Hard to get any separation because of the size of their courses are so short. Marks not set to a distance bewitched, and this was what Graham's favourite thing is the sail numbers can be identified in the control area. Where the argument comes is where is the control area. Now, a lot of people say you should have a short control area so everyone can hear you speak. If you have a short control area, you have a short course. All right, because the marks have to come in. All right. If you have a short control area, there is liable to be a lot more collisions on the mark because the skipper's sailing away from it. What they usually say is that the marks, this is not your problem, but the marks should have numbers on them, should have 2 numbers on them, the size of what's on your sail. When you're setting the course, if you can't read that number, bring it in. Also, you'll have a lot of complaints saying the mark is too far away. All right, you've got a long control area, where is the skipper? With the 65s and 95s, they have set distances. For 65 it's 40 metres, and 95 it's 50 metres. Now, this brings up a problem. One fleet had a disabled person in it, so that distance had to be measured from the centre of the control area. The other fleet, the other class, didn't have any disabled people. So you can move that distance to the end of the control area. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because everybody, just because somebody wants to sit down, that's their problem. All right? If they have to, that's another problem. Ranking events are basically able-bodied events which disabled people are allowed to sail in to the best of their ability. Offset marks. We normally have offset marks. Why do we have offset marks?
Collisions, separate
the fleet. To separate the windward boats from the boats running down. Offset marks should be at least 5 boat lengths, whole lengths, from the other mark. Why would that be?
It actually separates as 2 separate marks.
It's 2 separate marks. You'll often hear people say, oh, it's 1 mark, you can't gain an overlap. That is bullshit.
That's not correct, Bill, because then there's the zone from the first mark to the second mark would be 4.
No, because you...
Overlapping zones.
No, because you're leaving that, you don't leave the zone, you rounded that buoy when you clear the mark, all right, when your stern clears the mark, and you haven't entered, that's why it's 5. You haven't entered the other mark. All right, so you can't go, it's 2 separate marks.
Does that mean a boat can go inside another boat between those 2 marks?
That is a complete fallacy, all right? If it's 2 marks, yes, they can, because it then reapplies at 4 boat lengths. Reapplies at 4 boat lengths. Now, if they're 5 boat lengths apart, you'd be an idiot to do it, because if you don't get it...
You've got 1 boat length to do it.
If it's 8 boat lengths apart, you can go in there. It re-establishes itself at the 4 boat lengths for the next mark. That is why they don't advise you having 1 mark. Some courses you have to have as 1 mark. In radio sailing, if we're saying it's 1 mark, what we're actually saying is there's not enough room between the buoys to get an overlap. So if you haven't got an overlap at the first buoy, you haven't got an overlap at the second buoy. I've been to regattas where the marks have been bloody 10 metres apart, and the skippers say, oh, you can't go in there, you can't get an overlap. The RO doesn't have to tell you. If the mark is less than 5 boat lengths apart, then it's 1 mark. If it's more than 5 boat lengths apart, it's 2 marks. The only technical way that a race officer can declare it 2 marks is as if it's more than the 5 boat lengths apart.
Okay.
He can't set it 20 boat lengths apart and say it's going to be 1 mark.
Fine.
If the marks are close together, what I always say is radio sailing is percentages. If it's 5 minutes apart, it's very poor percentages to say I'm going to get an overlap on the next boat. All right? If you don't get it, you're in deep shit. Right? And don't forget what the rules also say. If it is doubtful that the overlap had been established or broken, it hasn't been.
Bill, can I just... the only time a race officer could declare the top and the clearance mark as 2 marks is if they are a minimum of 8 boat lengths apart, given what constitutes a zone.
No, because you...
That's right.
No.
The mark between the mark room...
When have you cleared the mark? The mark, the zone, technically, is on the windward side or on the approach side of the mark. It's not a full circle. Soon as your boat clears that mark, and that mark's no longer in play, all right, you've cleared it.
That's 1 length.
That's gone. That's 1 length. Then you enter the next zone. The zone is on the approach side, 5 boat lengths. Now, we go to the other end. Buoys used for windward-leeward gates should not be placed more than 8 boat lengths apart. Now, why that is because lake sailing is very variable. The longer they are apart, the bigger chance a boat has got to get a lucky lift. You're not sailing the same course, you're sailing different courses. So the wind swings around one way, and a boat that just went to that side of the buoy, strictly because everyone else was going to that one, suddenly gets a lucky lift and he's a mile ahead. To reduce the leverage, we've got to keep them close together. We have them 8 boat lengths apart because that means there's 2 zones, all right? And the skippers are more likely to pick a side that they're going to. There's nothing worse than we're coming down, and you've got a whole heap of boats here, and this boat decides I'm going to go to this one in front of everybody, all right? So if you make it far enough apart, so they've got to commit to one side or the other. This sounds obvious. I had to stop a Marblehead event early, an Australian Marblehead event early, because the only place we could set the course, they were looking directly in the sunlight. In the afternoon, the sun was down, they couldn't see their boats. Halfway down the course, they couldn't see their boats because of the glare. So wherever possible, like I said, all these are guidelines. You can't always get everyone 100%, you've got to do your best you can. But avoid setting it into the sun.
A question, Bill.
Races finish on a beat to windward. Now there's nothing in the rule book that says a start has to be on a beat to windward. There's nothing in the rule book that says a finish line has to be on a beat to windward. Why do we do it on a beat to windward?
Read the sail numbers.
So the scorers can read the sail numbers. Yeah. There is nothing worse than doing a complete course and the scorer coming up to me and says, look, sorry, I couldn't get half those numbers. And they can't get the numbers if your sails are out square. All right. What we had to do at several events, especially with the smaller boats, the DFs, we had to set a finish line, which was the lead from the bottom gate, in close to the bank.
Was that a Coomera?
Yeah, well, I've done it a few times.
Yeah.
Because people can't read the sail numbers. All right. So really, the race is finished at the gate. All that is doing is progressing into the buddy so the scorers can account for you. Now getting back to what Graham was saying, what is the advantage of having a gate at the top mark? You've got 2 options. You can either go through the centre, out, or you can go out and in. That's bringing the boats back into each other. That one there, the big disadvantage of that is you're putting the boats back into each other. Yeah. My biggest bugbear, or biggest complaints at the top mark, is that there's too many rules and the rules change, and they do change. Yeah. All right? They change when boats pass head to wind. They change at the zone. Using a gate, we got 3 times more rules. Yeah. And the same rules don't apply to all the boats. If we're going through here and out, does 18.3 apply to these boats? No, starboard rounding doesn't apply. Does 18.3 apply to these boats? Yeah. Does Rule 18 apply to all the boats going up there? Rule 18 does not apply because Rule 18 only applies at marks that are going to be rounded on the same side. Yeah. We're not rounding them on the same side. So then you've got Rule 18 applying to this group of boats going to here, and Rule 18 applying to these group of boats, but not applying across the... They're different rules. Normally, if they made that, we go back to what we were just discussing before. To make that, we say, well, we'll solve all this, we'll just bloody make it 2 separate things. Well, what you've virtually done is made 2 separate courses. The boats aren't...
Destroyed the ladder.
The boats aren't sailing the same course. We're sailing 2 separate courses. What happens when we make the buoys wide apart? Pick up a shift and you bolt by a mile because you're not sailing the same course. It's not supposed to be a game of luck. There's one other one there. If you've got a starboard buoy that's close to the bank, like you can get up at Sunshine Coast, set the buoy at least 10 boat lengths away from the bank. Even if it's not the best position for it, at least 10 boat lengths. Why?
They are starboard approach to the mark.
Right, because what happens up at, what's the name of that? The boats come in on port, they come in by 8 boat lengths out to do the right thing. All right, they come in, so they tack on the starboard, they've done everything right, they can't lay the top mark. What are they going to have to do? Get up further, tack back again. That causes chaos. 10 boat lengths out, they can come in, tack onto starboard, lay the mark. Contrary to what big boats do, all the ROs signals are made orally or by sound. You know, in big boats they use flags and all that sort of stuff. All the ROs signals are made orally. What's the only time they're not made orally? If it's stipulated in the sailing instruction. Now I've seen some in sailing instructions that says if it's going to be a flag India, all right, you've got to fly flag India. Don't get down complicated. All your things are done verbally. You're supposed to and call the individual digits of the boat. So it's 26, not 26. 15, not 15. Starting and finishing, the start and finish line is on the course side of the buoys. In that case, this inside strut would be the start line, the finish line would be up the outside. Now, a lot of regattas, people say, oh, he was over. He may not, especially if you've got big buoys, he could be in the buoys. He's allowed to be, as long as his bow's not sticking up the other side of the buoy. Where it gets deceiving too, and where you've got to be very careful, is if a bloke's coming in with a lot of pace, the starting go, he's suddenly a boat length over. That doesn't mean he was over at the start. That means he's just got a good start. All right? So if people start complaining to you that, oh no, you're not calling the blokes over, just ignore it. Just be careful. If they're on the course side of the line, no part of their boat is allowed to be over. If you're the starter or the finisher, you should position yourself so you look directly down that line. If someone's standing in front of you, just politely ask him to move one way or the other. The scorer and the finisher must be able to sight it. That's more important than a bloke sitting 1 metre forward of the line or 1 metre behind the line. The starting procedures are set out in E34. In all ranking events, you should have a minimum 2-minute start tape. What the 2 minutes is there for is there's certain rules such as U flag and black flag that their timing starts from 1 minute before. So if you're in that area 1 minute before, you're called over. So say we had a flag India and they were over. The RO calls U flag. All right? All those boats in that area, if you've got a 1 minute tape and they turn it on, all those boats are disqualified. Could be half the fleet. That's why you've got to have the 2 minutes.
Give them a minute to clear it.
Now, people also get all confused. They say, oh, that just takes time. It takes no longer in fleet racing to have a 2 minute tape than it has a 1 minute tape. Because what the people do is they call the boats on the water, wait for them to get on the water and then put a 1 minute tape on. What we do, normally at the start of the day, or start of the regatta, we may have 2 minutes. And I explain to them, when I call boats on the water, the countdown will go on. All right? When the 2 minutes or whatever you've got to set it is up, the start tape automatically goes on. All right? Now, what the advantage is that, they're only about $13, but what the advantage is that, it's consistent. It's the same for everywhere. You'll find, especially at places like Paradise where you've got pretty good access and stuff like that, at the start of the event, people will be saying, oh, 2 minutes not enough to get out to the start line and that. And by the end of the event, you'll have it down under a minute start tape. You know, at the minute, then the 2 minutes. Call the boats on the water, away they go. Changing course. With the exception of shortened courses, that's been changed now because shortened courses are not permitted for ranking events, but for club events, they can only be changed between a heat or a race. All right, so you can't change the course halfway through it. The course is to be nominated no later than the warning signal, which is when?
1 minute, 2 minutes. Yeah.
2 minutes.
2 minutes before the start.
2 minutes before the start. So 2 minutes before the start, you have to have the course set out. All right, and the skippers are on the thing notified. You are allowed, but I advise be very careful about it. You're allowed to move the start line up to the preparatory signal. When's the preparatory signal? 1 minute. All right. Not advisable because depending on your boat driver and stuff like that, These radio control boats seem to be attracted to the bloody pickup boat. And they all sort of crowd into it. The standard sailing instruction, if you read Appendix E, it says that a course board, you may have a course board. Well, the standard sailing instruction says you will have a course board, and it'll be put in a position where the skippers can see it from the bank. Now, as an RO, you can really come undone. If you change a course, you do it orally and you don't change the course book. Because as soon as the bloke goes to the thing, he will ask for redress because the course board was different to the course you've told him. All right, so make sure, change it on the board. A lot of places use texture colours and draw lines all over the place. That's a nightmare if you have to bloody change a course. All right, you're there forever trying to change a course. What we found works well. Have a couple of top marks. You can have 6 if you want to, but 4 is usually good. 4 at the bottom. Set this one for the leftward side of the average wind, that one for the right hand side. That gives you 3 options to go around. Right? To change the course is just a matter of, and then tell the skippers. All right, very, very simple. With this system too, what is the only thing you usually have to change or keep an eye on? The start line. All right, so you've reduced the both job. All he's got to do is concentrate on that start line. He may have to pull one end up or down depending on which side of the course you're going to. All right. Now, our normal courses by the AOIA for ranking events should be windward-leeward courses. All right. You can do other courses if that's what the venue is better for. You can do a triangle sausage. You can do whatever you want, but the preferred option is the windward-leeward courses. Why windward-leeward?
It brings in the tactical aspects of the sport and the skipper's skill more than it does.
You've got more angles than on leeward.
Yeah, you've got more passing zones. Yeah. You've got more. Normally, if you go around and you're doing a triangle sausage, you go to get on the triangle. It's just one after the other. Especially if the boats are all relatively the same speed, it's one after the other. I like to set my start line down closer to here. All right, to get the best windward leg I can get in to start with. What happens after that virtually sorts itself out because you got up there, the boats have separated a bit. They're going to only get more separated as they go around the course thing. At Paradise and stuff, I like to set the finish mark up the top, provided what? Provided you can see it. Right, if you can't see, if the competitors can't see it, or the finishers can't see it, you're in problems.
Are you talking about another one, or the 2, or the rounding marks at the top?
You can do whatever you like. All right. The other good thing about using the top marks is they're usually closer together. All right. So it gives the scorers a better chance to thing, and that's not usually a problem because the boats are usually separated pretty well by then. Again, what you have to do is be able to see the numbers on the sails. It's no use sailing 30 races. Oh, geez, we've done well, and the scorers have got about 5 of them. All right, and they've guessed the rest. What you may have to do is set another buoy. You could set another buoy down there. So they go around. That's still a gate. If they want to go to the top mark, that's their business. Still gate. They run off, but the scorers can actually see down the line and finish them. All right. There's nothing worse than having to abandon a race because the scorers couldn't get the boats. And you can't blame the scorers. If they can't see it, they can't see it. This is is your bread and butter. All right. I hear arguments that, it's the same for everybody. There's also a saying you can't win at the start line, but you can bloody lose at the start line. You can bloody lose at the start line. So If they're having a lot of problem at the start line, start looking at yourself if there's something you can do. Can you make it so that they're separating on the line, even if it's not the 5-degree biased? Encourage them to go down the line, separate. I find that course board, and we've got different courses. You can lay any course you want in there at the top, 2, 3 legs, whatever. A lot of cases, you're better off doing the smaller course and 3 legs, provided you've got a good first windward beat.
Shortening a course, Bill, is that something we can talk about later on?
Yeah, well, shortening course, we will talk about it later. That's one of the changes to the sailing instruction. The sailing, if you go strictly by the racing rules of sailing, the race rules of sailing says courses can't be shortened, aren't to be shortened, all right? We used to have them shortened because the whirl's coming up and they want to get the skippers used to strictly by the rules. They brought it back that courses can't be shortened. For club sailing, I recommend that you leave it in. I'd much prefer to shorten a course than I would to abandon a race. You abandon a race, you're going to upset somebody. No matter what intentions you got, you abandon a race, someone will be disadvantaged, someone will think.
Do you have to clearly define the shortened course solution before the start?
If you've got a shortened course, yeah, if you've got a shortened course, you put it up there, all right? And you must call it before the first boat is on the last leg that they're going to finish on.
Do you have to advise of the shortened course solution, the alternative, before the race starts, just for if it's competitors aware of it, that's it?
Yeah, it's on the course board. A lot of things too, get the competitors used to, they'll come up and say, what's a course? Have a look at the board. I will always, if I amend the board, I'll blast a whistle, tell them that the course has been changed, all right? Advise them. After that, get them to look at the course board. Now that course board is pretty clear. You can't make too many mistakes with that.